that's where I kind of want to take this today. So, yeah. So we'll eventually get to the passage, but we're not going to start off there. So I want to start off with a question. It's an easy question, short question. My question is, what is pleasing to God? I mean, it's a simple enough question. What is pleasing to God? It's easy and and not very scary a question as it seems. It's absolutely vital and critical to understanding the proper interpretation of both the Bible and Christianity itself. So, I'll just pose it to you guys. What is when you think of pleasing God, what comes to mind?
No, I didn't know we were supposed to answer.
Oh, well, feel free. Yeah, absolutely.
Just being Christ-like towards other people.
Okay.
Just like being an ambassador for God.
Okay.
Just pretty much what you're
Okay,
called to do as a Christian, but I think that's the answer, nonetheless.
All right, it's fair. I see following his commandments. I see Bob stealing other people's answers. Abide by my word, you abide in my love. All right. Got a reference for that slip? That's a fun one, Bob. We may end up circling back around to that one in a little bit.
Ooh.
Any other thoughts, guys?
I'm sure there's a lot more. I just can't think
of.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty you could write here. I see a bunch of people typing. Micah 6:8. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Aiming to be as Christ-like as possible. Okay, these are all really good answers, really intriguing. And I like a lot of the stuff that you've written. If you're anything like me, you've probably got a ton of ideas and probably a ton of verses ready to go and ready to back up any claim that you make about how we can please God. If we want to go back to stuff that we've studied in this Bible study, you go all the way back to like James 1:27, talking about pure religion, taking care of the widows and the orphans. Or rendering service to your local church, doing something like teaching Sunday school or being a part of Awanas or giving tithes or going on mission trips or involving yourself with Bible studies or even leading Bible studies. Hi there. I mean, or small things like praying before a meal or posting and reposting positive messages in social media or being part of a Christian community, online or not. There are all these things that I think, especially in America, we look at and we're like, hey, that's a good thing. That's something that I believe that God would be pleased with. It's good, it's positive, and it brings people to see what Christians are really about and what God's really about. That sounded like my phone buzzed. That's an email that I don't care about. Cool. But the truth is a bit different. And I'm going to be very blunt. That is all a lie. There is no amount of sanctimonious behavior or wholesome speech or what have you that is pleasing to God. Welcome to reality. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want some evidence of that? Sure. How's this? Let's head over to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 64, verse 6. It says something like this. We have all become like one who is unclean. All our righteous deeds are like a polluted garment. We all fade like a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind take us away. And that's our righteous deeds. It says our righteous deeds are like a polluted garment. We're not even talking about the unrighteous ones because, there are a couple of Bible verses that I can think of that talk about how everybody has this wonderful little thing called sin. You want to talk about the unrighteous deeds? Let's take a look at that one. Let's look over at Mark, the book of Mark 7, or Mark chapter 7, 21 through 23. It says this: "For from within, out of the heart of a man come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, and foolishness. All of these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." That's your happy thought for the evening. And for a Christian, and especially I think like an American Christian, I think it's easy to say, "Oh, that's not me." And to say that, I would respond with, "Oh, really?" Because 1 John 1:8 paints a different picture. It says, "If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us." And you always have that old fallback of Romans 3:23, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." I mean, Romans, guys, how long did we spend in Romans? And 40 years. It felt like it at times, Wash. And you know what? I know I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't know. I mean, I'm quoting Romans. That should serve as an indication that I'm not trying to really present anything new or trying to like break your mind or blow your minds with anything crazy. But let's be real. This is all leading to a point. And it's a point that I found to be a particularly disturbing mindset to have when it comes to understanding God. And in order to bring that out, we're going to have to reference the greatest teacher who ever lived, the master teacher. We're going to head over to the book of Luke. Luke 17, verses 7 through 10. It's a little short passage. I totally didn't change that. Okay, undo that one. That's the wrong verse. Sorry. Art. I wrote it down initially wrong, and so I went to the wrong passage. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, football.
No, you're good.
I'll have the right one here for you a second. I apologize, guys. That was on me. Here we go. Now I got the right one. Technical difficulties. All right. That's the one. Can I get someone to read these 4 verses?
Yes.
Ben, if you would take that now that I actually have the right ones in there, that would be wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, just ate dinner. Unworthy servants. Will any one of you who has a servant, plowing or keeping sheep, say to him when he has come in from the field, "Come at once and recline at the table"? Will he not rather say to him, "Prepare supper for me, and dress properly, and serve me while I eat and drink, and afterward you will eat and drink"? Does he thank the servant because he did what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were commanded, say, "We are unworthy servants. We have only done what was our duty."
Okay, let's be real here. How many of you all were like think of this when you think of the parables of Jesus? This is one that comes to mind. Most people would say this probably isn't a real popular one. This isn't one that people think it's on the same level as like the parable or the parables about the kingdom of God, or of the prodigal son, or any of Jesus' more famous, well-known parables. This is one that kind of gets shoved out of the limelight and kind of sits in the background a bit. And I don't think that's a coincidence. See, my pastor, I was sitting at church on Sunday. My pastor said something, and it wasn't said like directly to me. I was sitting at the soundboard. He was in the middle of his sermon, but it was something that he said that caught my attention. And it really brought something to light that I hadn't realized I had invited in my own life, and it very subtly crept in, even without my real noticing or meaning to. It was sneaky about it. And it was this idea that somehow my actions, everything that I do, good things, of course, somehow forces God into a position of being in debt to me. Like when I do good stuff, God owes it to me to pay me for what I'm doing. It's this thought process that says, hey, look what I'm doing for God. I wonder what good thing he's going to do for me to show his appreciation. It's subtle, and a lot like many lies and deceptions that are told and become widespread. It's got a little hint of truth mixed in with it. Because biblically, we do know that God has rewards for us. This is a topic that the Bible discusses. We know that when we get to heaven, God has crowns awaiting all of those based upon their actions for all the deeds that we do here for the glory of God. Ooh, Kessa doing my... Oh, yes. The screw tape letters. I had forgotten about this. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's excellent point, Bob. Those crowns, while we are given them, we return them back to the one who allowed us to have them in the first place, right? Yeah, Kessa, you get a gold star for that one. For those that aren't familiar, the screw tape letters were written by C.S. Lewis, and they are a series of it's a series of hypothetical letters written between two demons, about kind of spiritual battle. And so it's from Screwtape, who is this other demon's uncle. And so whenever he writes, he writes in to try and advise his nephew on ways to fight spiritual warfare. And so he has this quote. What he says, referring to the Christian, even on his knees, about his own sinfulness is all parrot talk. At bottom, he still believes he has run up a very favorable credit balance in the enemy's ledger, the enemy being God, because these are demons talking, by allowing himself to be converted, and thinks that he is showing great humility and condescension in going to church with these smug, commonplace neighbors at all. And yeah, when you put it like that, that's kind of what it comes to. And in the pride in me would probably would kind of bristle at that and think, well, no, that's not at all what I'm doing. But isn't it? Isn't this what we're doing? We are telling God, hey, you owe me because I'm doing stuff. And in America, in capitalist America, hard work is rewarded, right? And I think that leads to part of this. We've allowed our minds to become polluted or corrupted from biblical teaching by the idea of the American dream. This idea that whenever I do something, somebody should reward me for this hard work. But we need to be very clear here. The reward that God has for us in heaven, we don't get those because God owes that to us. This passage in Luke isn't tremendously famous, as we've stated. Hang on a second. I'm trying to do something with my computer, and it's not really behaving well. Stop. Nope. Don't do that. Okay. All right, fine. It's not going to work. Whatever. No. We're fine. And so this passage isn't real famous. It's not often referenced. And I think that's partly because the devil wants to mask one very critical truth from as many people as he possibly can. And that is the truth that God owes us nothing. There isn't anything that I can do that will put God at even 1/1,000,000th of a percent in my debt. In fact, if we want to get down to brass tacks and just talk for real for a minute, the exact opposite is true. Let's think about another parable, the more famous one, involving a servant, the parable of the unforgiving servant. That's found over in the book of Matthew, Matthew 18. And I'm sure you guys know it. It's about this, about this one servant that owes his master a huge debt of like 10,000 talents. It's enormous, completely unrealistic. But it's unobtainium. Yeah. You could never pay this back. You could have multiple lifetimes and never pay this back. And the master, could have demanded everything from this servant. He could have had him thrown in prison and paid off his debt for the rest of his days. But the master, in the beginning, forgives the servant. He says, listen, I know you have this debt, but I forgive you of the debt. You don't have to pay it back. And it wasn't done out of gratitude or because he owed something to the servant. That's absolutely absurd. Who would think that the master owed something to the servant when the servant owed him 10,000 talents? It's like millions upon billions of dollars. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It wasn't, he didn't forgive him out of trying to even the scales. It was done out of mercy and love. And it was an action that should have resulted in a spirit of gratitude and love from the servant. Now, of course, we know that it didn't, but that was what it was meant to do. And this is what the parable back in Luke refers to when it says that at the end the servant will only say, we have only done what was our duty. It wasn't owed to us. It was a gift that pays a debt that we had that we could never account for. And it's one that, out of its very nature, out of its enormity, and out of the scale and magnitude of the love it demonstrated, it demands love and loyalty to the one that paid that debt for us. So, we go back to the beginning. We have this question, what pleases God? And right from the get-go, we had the wrong mindset. Because I didn't say, what can we do that pleases God? I asked, what pleases God? And there's a very simple verse back in the Gospels. And it occurs a number of times across the Gospels. No. The question, what pleases God, is actually a trick question that isn't a trick at all. It's just the truth hidden in plain sight. Matthew 3:17 says this, as Jesus is standing with his cousin John in the middle of the Jordan River. It says this, "And behold, a voice from heaven said, 'This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased.'" The reason that literally every other verse in the Bible that talks about pleasing God it can exist is because of the life and death of Jesus Christ. His righteousness, his holiness was given to me, to each of us, to you, to me, and to every other person that calls upon his name. So that whenever God looks at me, he doesn't see me as the sinful, fallen human being that I am. He sees the holy and perfect second person of the Trinity, the Son of God. He is the only being in the entire universe and all of existence that has ever been free from sin, and is the only one who is capable of satisfying God's demand for sinless perfection. And out of that love, that just unfathomable love, he gives that spotless record to me. I've always loved Romans 5:8. And I know we covered it back in Romans. And you guys probably know it by heart. God demonstrates his love towards us in that while we were still sinners, we are so fast to jump over that part. While we were still sinners, the enemies of God, the ones who had rebelled against him in the first place and harbored the one thing that God could not stand, it could never have in his presence. He demonstrates his love in that while we were still in that state, he was willing to die for us. And he took that record of sin and this inability to stand before God and have anything even remotely close to being presentable to him as some sort of appropriate gift or offering to him. And he says, I understand that nothing that you have is ever going to be close to worthy. He says, let me give you what I have. Let me give you the only thing that will ever satisfy him. And I give it to you, even I understand that you are an enemy as I stand, but I offer you a chance to step into my kingdom. What do you say to that? This is why I believe the Hebrew term hallelujah exists, because there's nothing else you can say to that. So ultimately, I say all that to say this. Let's be done with this ridiculous notion that we can put God into our debt. Let's really recognize where the debt has always been. It was never a debt that God owed someone. It was a debt that we owed someone. And God stepped into our lives, into our history, and made it his story and said, no, I got this one on our behalf. Let's recognize where the debt has always truly laid and the response that it demands from each and every one of us. Yeah, I know it was short this week, guys, but that's just what God's kind of been doing with me. And I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. So if you guys have comments, questions, I mean, that's everything in my notes. I noticed, Ongrid. Ah, Kessa. I'm paying back a debt, let's call it. Yes, Wash. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm always going to call you Wash. I apologize.
That's cool. No, I was just thinking about the way you said it, and I think that, you know, you say that God doesn't owe you anything, but the truth is, if I was thinking, if you trust in God, then He does, because you trust in His word, and God promised you the forgiveness. He promised you the kingdom, and so if you trust in Him, then He does not. He's not indebted to you. He just, He gives what He promises.
Yes, that is part and parcel to His character. It's not owed to us out of anything that we do. It's owed to us because He put that on Himself.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, Kessa. He owes that response because it's who He is. It's His nature. He promised it, and God has a 100% perfect track record of keeping promises. So, yeah. But yeah, that's a fair point. So when I say God doesn't owe us anything, He doesn't owe us anything that is purchased or attributed to our own deeds.
Exactly.
Anything that God owes us is because He has promised it to us of His own accord. So thank you for clarification. Yes. Jesus is what pleases God, and it's only because His righteousness has been translated to my account that I can please God. I'm going to be honest. I'm not entirely sure what that means.
Hang on a
I
second.
feel like I've seen that term before, but I can't think of what it means, Coach.
Karl Barth, German theologian.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yep. Thank you.
He was a Reformed theologian, but not in the traditional sense. He basically talked about how Christ was the only elect person, and the rest of us are beneficiaries of that election, but are not elect ourselves because we're not worthy of that election except by propitiation.
Yeah. I like to think I didn't go that far. Oh, Kessa, that's a race hand.
I was about to put in 3 more. I wouldn't make this the title of a talk, but I believe that when we do the things He wants us to do for the right reasons because we're impelled by the grace of Jesus, it is pleasing to Him.
Yes. And that's the point. That's why it's written what it is at the end of that passage from Luke, that it says, look, we only did what was our duty. They were so compelled to perform those actions. It's pleasing to them. It was pleasing to the master because the servant performed it out of understanding who the master was. Typically, when you were a servant, it was because you were paying off a debt. And our debt has been paid, but it wasn't paid by the ones who owed it. And because that debt was paid as a gift, we render services to the master. It is literally our duty to love and respect and show eternal gratitude to him because of the enormity of that gift. But yes, as the Bible does say, and in Hebrews, without faith, it is impossible to please God. And so that's where this ultimately leads to, is that apart from the actions of Jesus, there's nothing to place faith in. And so out of that faith, our debt is paid, and then we render our gratitude to the one who gave it. Oh, that's fine if you think that way, Cappy, but I will always refer to it as a debt. No, they're leaving. Any other thoughts or questions? I see Cappy typing, so I'm not ignoring him. I'm just wondering if anybody else has anything. That's fair. That's fair, Cappy. That's a good principle to follow, Ben. Man, I finish up early and everybody shows up. This is amazing. It's like, are we sure this scribe guy should be a Bible study leader? Mm-hmm. The grace of God. This is why we talk about. Some of you guys will know what I'm referring to when I say this, but there was a topic, I guess it was a few years ago, or quite a discussion about Christian service being liberating, and the idea of this slavery to God being the most liberating thing in existence. And this is exactly what we go back to, is that we aren't compelled to try to live up to a certain standard. That standard's been met for us, and now we abide by the quote laws of grace written on our hearts, out of love for the one and the standards that he has set, because he paid that debt for us, because we couldn't. That's a really good way of putting that, Kes. I don't think I've heard that before, but that's really good. Try harder is not good news. I like that. What are we voting no on, Cappy? I'm confused. Oh. Okay. Well, I'll step down now. Houdini's been typing for a little while. I'm kind of eager to see what she throws up here. I suddenly realize I'm sitting here and I was, before I was, working on the notes, I had Facebook open. And those of you that are my friends on Facebook probably know that my sister recently linked me into a picture on Facebook. And it's not a picture of me. It's a picture of a cat. And the cat has this goofy face on it. And it looks like it's trying to be happy, but it's hard to describe. But what it says is at the top, it says, when you've got a deep rage burning inside you, but you've got to act nice because you're at work. I'll see if I can get you a link, Bob.
Is that supposed to be you here or at work?
Well, at work. But I feel like it actually kind of ties in here in that I should act nice because you know, it's what I'm supposed to do kind of idea, as opposed to no, I act. It's like I don't act nice. I be godly.
I always
See if I
thought you
do.
had that deep burning rage.
That's why my sister linked me to it. What the? There you go, Bob. That must be nice, Gabby. Nah, I still haven't read what Silver wrote. That's a really good representation, Houdini. I like that's it's really good. You know, just in we can get a. It's never a perfect example, but the idea that you know, in human relationships, we treat certain people different and we regard them differently because of how we appreciate them. For a spouse, you know, yeah, there's that love, and so we regard things that they say with higher importance because of the love and the reverence to a certain degree that we show them. You know, that's true with friends, family, anybody. You don't just take someone that you've never met before and just take their word as, you know, no pun intended, gospel. And I think that's a really good kind of way to represent this idea here, in that, you know, out of the love, or out of everything that God's done for us, we represent him because of the tremendous love we have for him on account of what he's done for us. Yes, Bob. The reason I didn't post it in there is because the link's a little long. It's all right. I'm gonna let Bob do it. It doesn't bother me. Yeah. Just looking at this discussion, I love the idea that Christianity is so deep. We talk about the deep, deep love of Jesus in a hymn, and so many, you know, we talk about that neither height nor depth nor breadth nor all those things can separate me from Christ, and how Christianity is so deep when God gets involved. And yet, in many ways, especially here in the Western world, Christianity is so shallow, and I think that's why it's so misrepresented, is because it's never truly been represented accurately as the truly astoundingly complex and deep entity that it is. Well then, calm down, fish sticks. We're not done yet. Any other thoughts, guys?
Oh my gosh, that's the gift that Fish Sticks uses?
I thought you would appreciate that.
Except, I mean, out of context, I can appreciate that. But knowing what it's.
Talk to Sky.
I will. Words will be had.
Oh, get the popcorn. Last call, guys. Any other thoughts? Uh-oh. Everett can't hear nothing.
Well, Everett, can you hear this? Because we're all being pretty quiet.
No, we will not be doing this all over again. Football's been recording, mistakes and all. So he can re-upload it. Chick-fil-A. Yeah. I'm not going to do it again because I was really good and went under time.
What? No way.
You kind of pulled out your Southern Baptist preacher there for a minute too.
I am not a Southern Baptist. I'm an independent Baptist. Thank you very much.
But you're in the South.
Yes, that is true. But being in the South and being a Baptist doesn't make you a Southern Baptist. There ain't no
Yeah, sure it
conventions.
does.
There ain't no conventions in my book. On earth, I can never tell.
Nope, it was the Baptist high five.
Oh, there you go. Gotcha. I got
Thank
you
you.
covered.
Yep.
Wow, Megs. Wow. That's gonna keep that one around. That's somebody
Alright.
pin that. That's genius.
Stream is
Up.
going down.
I'm gonna steal that one too.